Hello and welcome once again to these SpaceChem tutorials. Let me quickly throw in here. Um, Wrong profile, I think. Yep. I think I'm on this one. Okay, so yeah, this is better. So let's have a quick look. Last time we did Cinema 2. That was just the basic introduction. Finished off on removing bonds, that really simple machine. The next one is Cinema 4. I think that's Cinema. And this mission's a bit more interesting. Now this introduces another concept. Let me firstly tidy up a bit. We're going to need one pair of bonders to make a double bond on the oxygen. And we're going to need to output the oxygen into the psi output, as is here. As I said earlier on, get into the habit, if possible, of making your output actually in the place it needs to be outputted, and that means you've got less overall work to do, because obviously once I create the oxygen in that spot, all I have to do is flush it. If I created the oxygen over here, for instance, I'd then have to carry it up to here, so there'd be an extra step involved. Now there's two ways of doing this one, and they're both valid, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one Walder, just the red layer. Let's take a drink of my tea. And the reason being is just to demonstrate, you need this technique a lot. Picking up more than one atom from the same circuit. So the pickup point is always going to be here. And my first drop off is going to be there. I'm going to have to bring that back. You'll see why in 1 second. Just go up a level here. Okay, I just moved everything up a level. So basically, I start, I in, I grab, I go round, and my first drop off is going to be, I think I'll do it on the inner one here. Is that right? There. Now instead of going back to the start, I'm actually going to zip back round and go through that grab point again and cross over my own circuit, and then go back around again, drop here, and then go back to the start, crossing over my own circuit. Now basically that allows me to pick up two oxygens on the same layer in one loop, i.e. one full. That's actually one loop. I mean, I know it looks like two, but it's actually one, which I'll quickly demonstrate. Now this in here, grab here, drop here. That's where I'm going to drop the first oxygen. So in, grab the oxygen, drop the oxygen. Then I'm going to need another in here to get another oxygen. And then that's going to go around there, and I'm going to drop another oxygen there. And then I'm going to need to bond twice. So bond plus and another bond. Now one of the problems I create for myself here is that if I put the bond plus here, both these paths will trigger it. So I'm going to put the bond here, and then I'll need an output there. So outside. So let's just demonstrate this nice and slow. That should work, that circuit, but you never know. Let's give it a go. So as you can see here, the first oxygen's getting in, picking it up, loop in round, drop it there. Now we go through, we're not going back to the start here, the start's all the way over there, so we're still actually in the same loop, going round like this. Except the loop's obviously folded on itself. In, grab. Now here comes the second oxygen. Drop. Now, because we've dropped the oxygen here in the place it's going to be outputted, we saved ourselves a lot of work. That's the first bond. Now, oxygen can take up to 2 bonds. One of the features of the game is, it follows the rules of chemistry to some degree. Some atoms can take 1 bond, some can take 2, some can take 3. I think some can even take 4. You don't have to worry about it. You're never going to have to remember any of that. And if you overbond a pair of oxygens, I was to put 3 bonds in, it wouldn't actually bond the third one. It's not possible. And there we go, that's double. And then out. And that's our first one. So that's a pretty simple machine, but you can see now there's this concept here of actually going through the grab point twice. And this is a vital pattern which will be used a hell of a lot later on. And there you go. Let's quickly wind that up. Now you can see on this one again, this is what I mean by cycles v symbols. Very few symbols, but a ton of cycles. And obviously the number of cycles is because I'm going round the same loop twice. So it's actually creating quite a lot of work doing this big double loop. There is another way of doing this. I think I should do it just to demonstrate both ways. Oops. Let's go back into this a second. You can just, can you? Yeah, you can just select everything and delete it. Okay. Or I just usually drag it off the table as well, and that deletes it too. So the other way is to use both the blue and the red. Now the one's gonna have to start behind the other, otherwise they'll collide. Here's the grab here, and here's the blue grab here. Now the red input is going to be here, and the blue input is going to be close on its tail. So the blue one is going to be there. I think that might, I can adjust the size in a minute. So grab and blue grab. Let's just quickly try that out and just see that I've got the no, it's going to collide because the well that needs to be in alpha, which is the problem there, not an in beta. And it'll collide here on the because the blue needs to go back one more to avoid that. There we go. Now they're both whizzing around the circuit. Blue now will be dropping off on the far side, near side, sorry, because it's the last one there. And red's going to have to go on the far side because it's the first one there. And then red has to go back home. And blue has to get home at the same time. Now, the circuits have to be exactly the same size, otherwise we'll end up with synchronization issues. So let's quickly give that a go. There we go, in. Blue is now coming in for the grab. You can see that red has to drop on the far one, otherwise blue would come and hit it in the arse. There we go. And blue is there. Perfect, and then now they're exactly the same distance apart they were. What should happen here, if the loops are synchronized, the red boulder will hit the start at exactly the same time as the blue boulder hits its start. If that's not the case, then the loop isn't synchronized. I'll talk about synchronization a lot more, but that's a really important feature of the two loops. Otherwise the two loops get out of sync and, well, things start to go wrong. As you can see, they're both coming into the start at exactly the same time, so everything is good. Now all I've got to do now is bond the two atoms and flush. Now we know that blue is the last in, So it's going to be blue that's going to do the bonding, and blue can also do the flushing because there's room before the start here. And out psi. By default, blue will always out to omega, but you just change it to out psi. And that's it. So that's the second method of doing it, using the two layers rather than just the one layer double crossed. So let's try that one instead and see what we get. Bang bang. Now you can see that red doesn't do any more work. Because blue comes in second, in putting the bond on the blue layer, I know that both oxygens are going to be in the right place. So bond 1, bond 2, and then flush out, and there we go, 1 of 10. So a little bit faster. Now because the two Waldos arrive back at the start at exactly the right time, because both loops are exactly the same size, we know that each subsequent loop is going to do exactly the same thing as the first loop, and that's really it. It's that simple. There we go. Now this is the interesting thing here. You can see on this one here now, I've actually got many less cycles and slightly more symbols. Now in this particular instance, this is an overall just a better machine than the previous one, but you can see the kind of general theme is that you have low cycles or high symbols or the reverse. So that's how to do that in two different ways. Let's move on and do one more. Another bit of story. Like I say, well worth reading this. It is a really good story. Okay. This is a really basic one. Almost not worth doing, in fact. Basically, it's exactly the same as the previous one, except with 3 bonds rather than 2. Because it's nitrogen. Nitrogen has 3 bonds. I don't even know why they bother with this one. Let's have a look. So basically, I'm just copying the same steps as before. I'm doing the 2-layer method. There will be a slight difference, which we'll see in a second. If I copy the loop exactly. Now, blue grab, blue go around. I might just move it all down 1, just to make sure I've got enough room for things. There we go. Red. Red go far. Red's a slightly bigger loop there than blue, isn't it? So to counter that, I'm going to have to push blue forwards 1. How did I avoid that in the first one? Alright, blue just carried on going through, didn't it? That's right. I didn't cut blue back straight away. So let's do the same thing here. The loops have to be the same size, otherwise we get back into synchronization again. So grab, drop the blue in the near, and drop the red on the far. So in blue, oh, that's got to be in alpha, isn't it? Grab, yep. And blue needs to do 3 nitrogen bonds this time. 1, 2, 3, and out psi. Another in? I don't think so. Let's get an out in there. Out psi. And you can see that all I've done actually to make this work, because I needed 1 more space for the bond, I actually moved it across 1 to the right and stretched out the loop size by 1. You can see here this is 1 smaller. Other than that, it's exactly the same problem. Exactly the same solution, just 1 more bond. So this should work first time. Now red's finished its work. Blue now is doing all the bonding. 3 bonds. 3rd bond coming up now. And now out psi. There it goes. and blue is back to start, and red is back to start, and that's it. So really, like I say, a pointless puzzle because it's the same problem. Now, this is more interesting. Now, we want to have carbon going out the psi output and oxygen going out the omega. Now, there's many hard ways to do this and one really easy way. And it goes back to this rule again of actually doing what you need to do in situ. That is to say that I want the carbon atom here and I want the oxygen atom here. Now if I split them, they're in the right place for the output and there's no more work to do. It makes it incredibly easy. So let's dump this again. Now red's going to come, I'll put it in there. I'm going to grab the carbon atom there. Now to get this orientation I'm going to need this new symbol. We haven't seen it before. It's the rotation and it's pretty self-explanatory. Now what I need to do is I need to rotate the carbon monoxide 90 degrees to the right so that the carbon is on the top and the oxygen's on the bottom. So 90 degrees to the right would be that one. So you can imagine that this is like grabbing hold of the carbon and twisting the whole thing, and the oxygen now point downwards. So I drop the carbon there and you'll see this is pause, and pause is an interesting symbol. It doesn't do anything except stop the circuit, and you use it for actually problem solving the circuit or debugging the circuit. So just to see this in action there, let's show that one more time. Oop. So I deliberately picked it up from the carbon end. Now this rotation is like, you can imagine that pressing down on the carbon and twisting it in the direction of the arrow by 90 degrees. Like that. Now because the carbon is in the psi output and the oxygen's in the omega output, we're done. All we have to do now is break the bond. And again that's a bond minus and a bond minus. Now we need to flush both sides, so we need an out psi and a out omega. And that's it. Again, because we actually split the molecule over the necessary outputs, we saved ourselves a ton of work. And that's a really important principle in this game, is to try and save as much work as possible. Let's see it in action. Simple as that. Let's crank it up to high speed. We need 10 out of the side, so they'll obviously finish at the same time. And there we go. So really low number of symbols used there, and a good number of cycles, and a nice solution. Let's have a look at one more. Right, yeah. This is interesting because this introduces a completely new concept. At the moment, we don't actually have to do anything except this is benzene and this is acetonitrile. All we have to do is make the acetonitrile go into that storage tank and the benzene go into that storage tank. And this is really just like a dumb introduction, because you basically can grab hold of that pipe and do what you like with it and put it straight to the storage tank. Ooh. So in this case, all I need to do to finish this problem off is stick that pipe in that storage tank and that pipe in that storage tank, and that is it. But what it's actually doing here is introducing a new concept which will come into play. There you go, just whack that up. I think here, yeah, yeah, this is the place where I'll come into play. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it here. I think this is enough for one session. On the next session I'll do these last two, and this is where things start to get a lot more interesting. So I hope that's helped, and like I say, things are going to really crank up a bit now, and it does get a lot more interesting. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.